kids. Today for Show and Tell, I brought my G&L ASAT Classic in butterscotch blonde. G&L was Leo Fender's company. Leo Fender said that his G&L guitars were his finest. In fact, he called his G&L guitars the real ones. We're going to talk about what makes G&L guitars so unique and what makes this particular G&L guitar really cool. And also, what does the future hold for G&L now that Fender Musical Instruments Corporation bought them? We're going to talk about all of that today on Ray Plays Guitar. Let's get into it. Yeah, so this is called a G&L ASAT. It looks a lot like a Telecaster, doesn't it? Because it basically is. Leo Fender was a very forward-thinking kind of guy. That's why he came up with all of these great iconic guitars. Starting with the Esquire, which morphed into the Telecaster. Then he came out with the P-Bass and the Stratocaster. I mean, these iconic instruments. And then in 1965, Leo, he had some health condition. He thought he was dying.
This is a big one. I'm dying. You hear that, Elizabeth? I'm coming to join you, honey. I might need that money tonight. Give me my money.
So he sold the Fender company to CBS Broadcasting for $13 million. But then he got a new doctor, and his new doctor said, no, you're not dying. And Leo continued to live. And then he formed CLF Research. Then he kind of partners up with two other dudes, formerly of Fender, and they form a company called Music Man. And with Music Man, Leo creates the Stingray bass, another iconic instrument. And then by 1979, things soured between CLF Research and the Music Man company. And Leo parts ways with the Music Men, and he forms G&L Instruments with his old Fender partner, George Fullerton, and also another former Fender guy, Dale Hyatt. But for some reason, only George and Leo got their initials on the company name and onto the headstock here. Sorry, Dale, I don't know what happened there. They could have been GLD, right? Kind of cool, GLD guitars. Anyway, but Leo was a very forward thinker. That's why you see all these really cool advancements with the electronics in his bass guitars. And his very early G&L guitar prototypes had a lot of these extra things, the active pickups and a lot of extra switches and things that a lot of people didn't like at first. But Leo didn't want to look backwards. He didn't want to do anything that he did in the past. He was like, I already did it. I'm moving forward. So it's kind of ironic that this particular looking guitar, which looks a lot like his first Telecasters, wound up being among the last production models that G&L put into their catalog.
And isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
In fact, Leo was even reluctant to use the Tele body. As the story goes, I think George Fullerton or it might have been Dale and one of the other guys, I forget, put together one of these Tele-shaped guitars while Leo was out on vacation. And the ASAT has become one of G&L's most popular models, I think. In fact, probably their most popular model. So the original ASAT had the Tele body, but it had two of the big, what are called MFD pickups. And that's one of the things that Leo invented with G&L was the MFD pickup, because they're motherfucking delicious. No, MFD stands for Magnetic Field Design. The most notable characteristic about these is that it uses a ceramic slab underneath these iron pole pieces, which are adjustable. So it uses a more powerful magnet, fewer winds, giving you more output, so you get less hum out of these. But you get all the twang. And that bigger housing in those original MFD pickups They look more like P90s, and they kind of sound a little bit more like P90s, but they're not P90s. They're MFDs. But those larger MFDs kind of looked a little funny to some people. And then the original ASAT also included his saddle lock bridge, which had a lot more mass, and it was actually set into the body. So there was a slight route, and the bridge is set into the body to create more surface area contact. And also, the saddles could be locked together with an Allen key on the side of them. So it creates a solid piece of mass. So it gives you more sustain and better energy transfer from the strings into the body of the guitar. Wonderful invention. Another thing G&L used to do back in the day was do what's called a bi-cut neck. They would take these necks and cut it straight down the middle. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but they would cut it straight down the middle and then reverse the grain, so that if the wood had any tendency to warp one way, the other side would warp in the opposite way and kind of even things out. And then while they had that neck cut open, that's when they would do the truss rod channel and do all that stuff. And the bond of glue is said to be stronger than the wood fiber itself. So on a neck like this, the fretboard is not a separate piece. It's just one continued piece. And you can't even see the cut line or anything. But one of the things you can see is, check this out. See this little hole right there? Can you see that? There's a hole right there. And then you can also see one, it's a little more difficult to see, but there's also one here. It's hard to see because you gotta look through the paint. But anyway, so these are little, what are known as birthmarks that you will see on many G&Ls. And the pre-CBS Fenders will have these same birthmarks. And these holes are from the drill presses that Fender used to use back in the day. Now the story goes that when Leo Fender first sold his Fender company to CBS, CBS didn't want any of the presses. So Fender either reclaimed them or Leo just kept them and continued making guitars on those same presses. Now, I don't know if that story is 100% true, but at least we know that Leo Fender, when he was making these G&L guitars, were making them in the exact same way on the same type of presses that he did when he was making his original Fender guitars. So that's one of the really cool things, I think, about G&L guitars, is you have those birthmarks. Now, G&L eventually started using more CNC processing. I think they moved to CNC around 2005, 2006, and that's when you'll see those models after that will not have these birthmarks. But because of the CNC precision, they're still wonderful guitars, but they don't have the sort of historical connection to Fender that these G&Ls have. So what makes this guitar so cool? G&L decided to do a more traditional looking Tele. They came out with this classic version. Here we have more of the traditional bridge assembly, but instead of using the 3 brass saddles that the vintage Teles would have, he uses 6 individual brass saddles that can each be adjusted separately so you can get a better intonation. And then obviously he shrunk the size of the MFD pickups down to fit into these traditional sized pickup routes there. This particular model also has gun oil tint on the neck to give it that nice sort of vintagey look. This particular guitar, I think it was made in the late 90s or early 2000s. And it sounds great. Definitely sounds like a Tele. We got playing the bridge pickup here. So I'm plugged straight into my Suhr Badger 30 head, and that's plugged into a Mojotone 2x12 loaded with Celestion Greenbacks, and I'm miking that up with a Shure SM57 going into a Focusrite audio thingy, and then into Logic Pro. Now we got both pickups going on. Here's the neck pickup. It's a great sounding guitar. It's all Tele. So G&L kind of fell on some tough times. I think COVID hit them hard and they just couldn't recover. And Fender Musical Instruments Corporation steps in and purchases G&L. Now they just purchased the intellectual property. I don't think they got any of the physical property. They didn't care about their inventory or their factory or their employees or anything like that. I think what they really wanted was that Leo Fender name and wanted to be able to use his name and likeness in all of their marketing materials. And why wouldn't they? So here's kind of a funny story. So when Leo first created the Telecaster, well, the first model with the one pickup model was called the Esquire. And he released that. And then he created the two pickup model, but he called it the Broadcaster. And I don't know how many Broadcasters they made, but I guess Gretsch had a model of drums out at that time called the Broadcaster, but with a K. So they sent Fender a cease and desist letter, and Fender was like, oh yeah, sorry. And then they changed the name to Telecaster eventually. Well, when G&L decides to release the ASAT, they want to call it the Broadcaster. And before they do it, they check the trademarks and everything, and by that time, it was free and clear. Nobody really had a claim to the name. So they called it the Broadcaster, started producing these guitars, and once again, Gretsch was like, no, you can't do that. And even Fender at that time also was like, yeah, we don't think it's fair that you can do this. And so G&L, even though they probably could have had a case, they didn't want to spend any money getting embroiled into legal red tape. So they were just like, all right, fine, we won't call it the Broadcaster. But it's interesting that they tried to do it twice and failed both times, squashed by Gretsch each time. But the G&L Broadcasters, I think they made 860 some of those guitars, and I think all of those were signed by Leo Fender himself. Those would be probably the most collectible G&L guitars out there right now. In fact, I did a search just the other day, and I saw two Broadcasters out on Reverb.com. One was going for a little over $5,000, and the other one was going for $3,000. They're both black and both from 1985. And somebody should snag one of those up and send it to me. And then obviously any G&L that was made while Leo was still alive, and I believe he passed away in 1991. So any of the G&Ls from 1980 to 1991 would be the second most, I think, collectible G&L guitars. So after Leo passed away, G&L continued to make guitars exactly the way they always have to about 2005, 2006. That's when they started to heavily go into CNC manufacturing, this computer numerically controlled manufacturing, which all modern manufacturers are doing because it's faster, it's more precise, and cheaper. But G&L guitars after 2006, still wonderful guitars. They still made fantastic guitars all the way up until the day that they closed their doors, unfortunately. They also have the Tribute Series. Now, the Tribute Series is G&L's import series. Still wonderful guitars, and I hear they also use U.S. electronics and pickups in their tribute series. But to me, the main attraction of G&L Guitars was that it was Leo Fender's company, and he was making guitars. He was showing up to work every day and innovating. Among some of his other innovations he created while at G&L was the dual fulcrum bridge and the passive treble and bass tone system, PTB tone system, and then the Z coils, which was another crazy looking pickup that he did. But it was basically the MFD pickups, but split in a way that they would be completely hum canceling. So hum canceling single coils, that's what the Z coils are all about. But again, a lot of people couldn't handle the look of them. I mean, despite Leo's innovations, G&L Guitars never really became a household name. But I think because of that, if you're a player, G&L Guitars are a fantastic brand to be looking at because you get a lot of guitar for your money. And pick them up now before they become too collectible, if you know what I mean. I'm going to turn the gain up on the Suhr Badger 30, and we're going to listen to this guitar with a little bit more gain. So what does the future hold for G&L? I think they're done. I think they're kaput. I don't think Fender's going to do anything with them. Why would they? I don't think the brand G&L is strong enough to help Fender in any way. And like I said, to me, the attraction of G&L was the fact that Leo Fender, his involvement in it. So G&L is really no different than Fender itself. It's a company that Leo Fender started. But he's not there anymore. Now I can see Fender, taking like something like the MFD pickups or the saddle lock bridge design and continuing making those or offering those as options on their guitars. I could see them even just making these MFD pickups and branding them as Fender pickups. I mean, they were designed and made by Leo Fender. Why can't they just rebrand them as Fender MFD pickups? But now Leo Fender's name is back with the Fender company. And we still have plenty of G&L guitars out in the wild to play and enjoy. Do you have a G&L? Do you have a tribute? Do you have both? Tell me about your G&L or your experience with G&Ls. But that's all about my G&L ASAT Classic in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please leave those down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, share this video with your friends, subscribe to Ray Plays Guitar, hit that notification bell. But most of all, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next time.